Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Focus on K-12, EdTech and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko, Education Strategist for CDWG. Today, I talk to Dr. Jen Williams about the Sustainable Development Goals and their applications in education. Let's dive in.
I am Jennifer Williams. I am an educator here in Florida. I'm also the co-founder, director of Take Action Global Nonprofit, the founder of TeachSDGs. I'm an author, a speaker, and I am a professor at St. Leo University.
Well, you've definitely been busy. I know you've done a lot of work surrounding the SDGs. So for people who don't know, tell us what those are and why they're important.
Great. So if you haven't yet heard of the SDGs, also known as the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, these are 17 goals that we as a world came together in 2015 and agreed upon for our entire planet to reach by the year 2030. So we're here in 2021, which means we have about 9 years left on these goals. And they cover things like gender equality, life on land, life underwater, poverty, hunger. We actually have our very own goal, which is SDG number 4, quality education. So a lot of people don't know yet about the global goals. So we've been working the past few years to raise awareness of them within education, because we really believe that teachers and students are going to be the key to us achieving these goals by 2030. So we have a lot of work to do. There's definitely urgency around them. In the next 9 years, we have much to accomplish.
So I know they're global goals, so they're all of our goals, but where did this work start, or where does it live, or sort of who keeps up with all of this?
Mm-hmm. So the United Nations is really the organizing body that is bringing together conversation and work around the 17 SDGs, but it's the responsibility of all of us. So if you're a citizen of planet Earth, then we're all in on these. So for us, we as a group of educators, we had been doing a lot of work in global education early on. So this was before we had spaces like Twitter and PLN where we could jump in and find people to connect with and collaborate. But we were really seeing the importance of global citizenship, global competencies, building those. But it didn't necessarily have natural connections with the work teachers were doing or as far as they could see. So in 2015, these global goals came out. So we saw this poster with these goals. And so we started to share that out with teachers, and they started to see themselves in the work and in the conversation and represented, saying, well, I've been talking about gender equality my whole teaching profession. I've been addressing poverty and things like sustainable cities and how do we work with communities. So this is the part of the work teachers have been doing forever. So we sent out a tweet and said to the UN, who's doing this work? Because we believe teachers and students need to be a part of this dialogue. And funny enough, they answered and said, we're interested in answering that question as well. So that was the beginning of TeachSDGs. So TeachSDGs exists to support the Sustainable Development Goals and have teachers, classrooms, schools represented up in New York City and headquarters and around the world. So we are, as TeachSDGs, a global movement of educators. We have about 50,000 teachers who are doing the work every day, but we are one world on one mission.
Thanks, Jen. So you've worked internationally, right, through the nonprofits to be able to bring this work to fruition in all different areas: urban, suburban, rural, large, small, you name it. We've seen this work happening there. So what are some of your favorite student examples of work with the SDGs?
Oh, yeah. So I love that question. It's been neat to see. So we, with our work around the SDGs, we really started off more around advocacy awareness, because as I mentioned, not everybody knows that these goals exist, particularly here within the United States. We'll talk to other countries, a lot of countries in Asia and Africa. These goals are built in and mandated as part of everyone's everyday work. So these goals, which is great, it can be anyone. So students ages 3 all the way up through higher ed. I love that teachers will find the goals, and we'll have science teachers being like, well, these are definitely science. Or we'll have humanities teachers will like, of course the goals are humanities. Arts teachers saying the same thing. So it's definitely interdisciplinary. We're seeing a lot of collaboration over content areas, also with multi-age groups. And then just so many different examples. So we have students who are inventing, students who are storytellers, students who are teaching. We've done a lot of that with our goals project. I've seen classrooms, I'm thinking of a classroom in Malaysia, and they brought us on their learning journey through use of technology. And so they were using tools like Wakelet and Minecraft. And so they were learning about the goals, their specific goal. This was 2 years ago, our project we did. I always use it as an exemplar. And they were learning about life underwater with SDG 14, and they were building coral reefs. So they went into Minecraft, they Skyped in with experts, scuba divers. They built these 3D coral reefs, and they went out and planted them. So we have students doing that. We had in our recent project, students building a social justice library in their school. We had a group of kindergarten students in Thailand use art to teach about life underwater. So the possibilities are really endless, which is great because teachers not having a lot of extra time and saying, well, I don't have time for one more thing, they can find ways to build it into the work that they're already doing.
So for a student, a teacher, district leader, parent, really anybody who wants to get more involved in this work, what's one or two things that they can do right now or tomorrow to get involved?
Mm-hmm. How to get started. So there are a lot of entry points, I would say, into the work. The easiest one I would say that really has a lot of power is printing off the SDG poster. So the United Nations has all 17 goals represented in a one-page poster. The poster has icons for each of the goals. Every goal is represented with a color, like quality education, where this big, bold red SDG 4. So I always recommend to teachers, if you're new to the SDGs or school leaders, print off that poster and put it in a place in your school environment that can get attention and eyes on it. Because what will happen next is you'll have people pointing to it going, well, wait, what's that? And this is a great opportunity for those school leaders or teachers to kind of have this sense of vulnerability and going, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm learning about them, but these are the SDGs. Would you like to learn along with me? Because I think for us as teachers too, we're not the experts in all of the global goals. But it's really special to be able to say to your students, but do you want to come along this journey with me, and we can figure it out together? That's one way. I think the other thing that I've seen beyond that is just finding opportunities for access. So I always think of access to ideas. So how can we bring in new ideas, new perspectives around the global goals? So you can do things like having experts come in and do interviews with them, access to information. So there are a lot of wonderful thought leaders around this work. So right now I'm heavily focused on SDG 13, which is climate action. And so I'm definitely not an expert in climate action, but I believe in this. And so I'm learning as much as I can from the scientists around their areas of expertise. And then finally, access to opportunities. So if we can get our students having opportunities to create, to have deep levels of learning, to have partnerships with students who look and live differently from other parts of the world, I think that can lead the work as we're going to be doing with the SDGs.
And Jen, as you talked about that, I thought of the idea of the mystery Skypes and bringing a scientist
Right.
into the classroom and these things that we've seen over the years. Really, this is a great way to do that because it's so targeted and specific in what people are looking to learn about.
It's true. And I think what I've seen, and I was part of that early movement too, when we were early adopters with technology in our elementary school. And we were using that as almost like our global handshake, where we would meet people. But then if you keep that relationship going and doing things like virtual exchange, I'm part of, with the Department of State, we do a comics in the classroom experience right now. So classrooms from different parts of the world are using virtual exchange to co-create comics around a social impact issue. And having an end goal, something that you're going to work on together, and then have that digital artifact at the end that you can feel proud of. It's really neat to see.
So there are obviously a lot of goals there. Which of the goals do you think is the biggest lever and maybe can help drive impact in the others?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's kind of like when I know I've taught, like when I teach first grade or when I teach fifth grade, like what's your favorite year to teach? And you're like, I love it all. And I think wherever I'm at the moment is what I'm really interested in. I've kind of fluctuated. I really believe in, of course, SDG 4, quality education, has a soft spot in my heart, but I really lean into SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. I think partnerships for the goals is written specifically for the SDGs, but I really believe in partnerships in general. How can you find people who may, like we just mentioned with climate action, people who may be more knowledgeable? We can't have skills in all of the areas and expertise, but finding those right people and inviting them in on that journey and saying, would you be interested in working with me on this? And then figuring out where you're going to go together. So I really think SDG 17 is an interesting one for us to pay attention to. I kind of think of it as the teacher of the class. So of all those 16 goals were the students, and then SDG 17 is the teacher for the class that they all are part of. But they're all linked. It's just like a puzzle. You can't have one without the other. I mean, if we talk about hunger, then we definitely need to talk about poverty, which we definitely need to talk about gender equality and inclusion. So they have to all work together and move forward, not in isolation.
So what you're saying is today you're not picking your favorite child on the show.
I won't do it.
So Jen, have you seen any big shifts? You said this started in 2015. Over the
Right.
last 5 or 6 years, have you seen any big shifts in how this is perceived or how the work is progressing?
Mm-hmm. So for us, I mean, I've seen it both in education, but broadly too. So within education, I think I've seen more awareness, and it's also been at a time where we're starting to see more activism on the part of our students. So they're doing this work with or without us, I think. So we're seeing students jump in and lead the way. We've also had COVID. So now we have teachers. We've accelerated everything that they're doing online. So now they're more connected than ever. And so they're finding the SDGs. I think they're settling into them. With a lot of the teachers I work with, this brings them back to their why they got into education in the first place. They really wanted to make a difference. And so the SDGs aren't bound to things like standards and grades and rubrics, though they do fit nicely in with those. But it's actually about the work and seeing those students getting out, making an impact. So I have seen some tremendous shifts within education, but I think also beyond. I think we're starting to see within industry, there's a lot of alignment with the SDGs. We're seeing corporate social responsibility, a lot of companies that are committing to these goals, specifically abroad. They're really taking action when it's most important. So I think first, it's just the awareness that they exist. And then when people find out they do, they're like, why didn't I know about this sooner? They've been here for 6 years. How can I get involved? So that's what we've been really working towards, is now that there's more awareness, how can we help? And so we're doing things like the Goals Project and the Climate Action Project, helping teachers to get plugged in and get moving.
So Jen, you've been very plugged into this work for years now. So what are some of the best resources, books, leaders, people to follow, things to keep in touch with as people are going down their SDG journey?
Mm-hmm. And it is a rabbit hole, because once you jump in, you're like, okay, now I want to do this and that and this and that. So I think for me, I always look right to Twitter. So there's a great conversation happening around this work with hashtag TeachSDGs. You can also look at teachsdgs.org. We have resources there. You can apply for our ambassador program. We're in our 5th cohort of ambassadors from all around the world. We have takeactionglobal.org. So that's our nonprofit organization. And that's where we have resources and projects. So if you're looking for experiences, you can connect your students in. We have ongoing projects. And then we look to the UN. And so the UN isn't just that body on the hill anymore that's not accessible. They want to hear from teachers. And so they have a wonderful presence on social media as well. You can follow them, tag them in on your shares, and they've been really great about getting back. So I would connect with those spaces first. And of course, anyone can always reach out to me on Twitter, social media, across on Jen Williams EDU.
Jen, thank you so much for the time today. I always appreciate our chance to talk.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter @dconopelco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.